It happened 2 winters ago, but the memory still stings like frostbite. I can recall every detail: the smell of pine and cinnamon candles in my apartment, the faint hum of Christmas songs on the radio, and the warm excitement bubbling in my chest because, for once, I thought we were going to be a real family again. I had taken time off work, wrapped presents weeks in advance, and even bought matching pajamas for everyone, one of those silly things that families do. But to me, it meant something more. It meant belonging. I was standing in this kitchen, whisking cream for the dessert I planned to bring, when my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice sounded strangely cheerful, too cheerful. She didn't even say hello, just sighed and said, "Catherine, honey, we decided to cancel Christmas this year. There's just too much going on. Everyone's tired, and it's better if we skip the gathering." I froze, whisk midair. "Cancel Christmas," I repeated, half laughing, half dreading the answer. "Yes," she continued, a little too quickly. "Your brother's not feeling well, your father's stressed. And honestly, it's just too much pressure this year. Let's rest and maybe do something small in January." Something in her tone felt rehearsed, like lines read from a script. I tried to swallow the disappointment rising in my throat. "Oh," I said softly. "Okay, I understand." But I didn't understand, not really. For years, I had been the one to hold our fragile family together, organizing dinners, buying thoughtful gifts, showing up to every birthday, even when no one showed up for mine. I was the oldest, the dependable one, the one who fixed everything. And yet, somehow, I was always the one left standing on the outside, peering through the frosted glass of a home that never seemed to have room for me. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at the twinkling lights I'd carefully strung across the window. They looked hollow without laughter beneath them. I thought about the empty seat at my dining table, the unopened bottles of wine, the carefully wrapped gifts with names that suddenly felt meaningless. I told myself it was fine that families changed, that maybe they truly needed a break. But deep down, a small, bitter voice whispered that something was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to silence. Snow had fallen overnight, blanketing the world in white. I made coffee, curled up under a blanket, and told myself I'd watch movies all day. I tried to ignore the ache in my chest, that dull, heavy feeling of being forgotten. Then my phone buzzed. It was a photo from my cousin, Emily. The caption read, "Best Christmas ever with the fam." I stared at the screen, not breathing. In the photo, my parents were there smiling, dressed up, standing by the fireplace in my childhood home. My brother and his wife were sitting on the couch, their kids opening gifts. The Christmas tree glowed in the background, the same one I'd helped decorate for years. And there, beside the tree, was the sweater I'd given my mother last year. The world tilted. I couldn't move for a full minute. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the faint carols playing in the background. They hadn't canceled Christmas. They had canceled me. My hands shook as I scrolled through more photos. Laughter, toasts, plates of food I used to cook. They'd done it all: the dinner, the games, the family photos, just without me. And they'd lied. I remember sitting there, the phone slipping from my hands, staring out at the snow until my vision blurred. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. I wasn't angry at first, just hollow, numb. Like a part of me had died quietly while the rest of the world carried on singing carols. Hours passed before the anger came. It arrived slowly, curling around the edges of my sadness, heating it from within. How could they do that to me? Why me? Why lie? I wanted to call my mother, to scream, to demand an explanation, but I didn't. I knew how that conversation would go. She'd play the victim, twist my words, say I was overreacting. I'd end up apologizing for feelings she caused. So instead, I said nothing. The next day, my phone rang again. My mother's name flashed on the screen. For a second, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. "Catherine," she said, all bright and chipper. "Merry Christmas, honey." I said nothing. "Sweetheart, you sound quiet." she continued. Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Your brother's kids begged us to do something small last minute. You know how children are. We just threw something together spontaneously. You understand, right? There it was, the lie dressed in justification. Of course, I said flatly, spontaneous. She laughed, completely missing the sarcasm. You'll come next year. Okay, we'll make it extra special. Sure, I said, next year. But as I hung up, I knew there wouldn't be a next year. Not like this. For weeks after that. I went through the motions of life work, groceries, bills, but something inside me had changed. The illusion of family had cracked, and behind it was a truth I'd avoided for years. I wasn't their daughter. Not really. I was their convenience, their placeholder, the reliable one they could exclude because they assumed I'd always forgive them. But not this time. It was late one night in January when I finally opened the old folder on my computer labeled Family Estate. My father had always kept me out of the family finances, but after my grandmother passed, she had left a portion of her will under my name. I'd never paid much attention to it, assuming my father managed it fairly. But now, something in me needed to look. And what I found made my blood run cold. My name was missing from the trust, completely. In its place was my brother's name transferred, signed, and finalized less than 6 months ago. That was my grandmother's inheritance. She had left it to me, specifically to me. I still had the original letter she wrote, tucked in a box of keepsakes, but the paperwork said otherwise. I sat there, trembling, staring at the screen. My father had changed it. He had stolen from me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching snow fall again, my mind spinning through years of small betrayals, my mother's excuses, my father's dismissive tone, my brother's smug smiles. It all made sense now. The favoritism, the lies, the misunderstandings. I had never been part of their family. I had been part of their convenience. But that realization didn't break me. It woke me. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called a lawyer. The lawyer's office was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel both nervous and powerful at once. I remember sitting in the chair across from him, my palms cold against the polished desk, the faint hum of the heater filling the silence. His name was Michael Hart, an old friend of my grandmother's attorney. When I told him my story about the inheritance, the lie, the sudden transfer of assets, he didn't interrupt once. He just nodded, his pen tapping against a notepad in slow, deliberate rhythm. When I finished, he leaned back and looked at me with something between disbelief and sadness. "Catherine, this isn't just unethical," he said softly. "It's illegal. If your grandmother's will clearly named you, and they altered the trust afterward, then we're talking about forgery and fraud." The word fraud echoed in my mind. It didn't sound real. My father, the man who used to lecture me about integrity and family loyalty, had committed fraud. Michael continued, his tone calm but firm. "Do you still have a copy of the original will?" I nodded. She mailed me a handwritten letter after the signing. It's in her handwriting. She even signed her name. "Good," he said. "That might be the key. We'll start by pulling the official documents from the probate records, compare signatures, trace the changes. But I'll warn you, Catherine, once this starts, it won't stay quiet. Your family will know you're coming for the truth." I met his eyes and said, "Good, I want them to know." The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings. Every discovery chipped away at what little innocence I still held. My father hadn't just adjusted the inheritance, he had removed me entirely, rerouting funds and properties through a shell trust under my brother's name. My mother had signed as a witness. They'd done it together. When the proof finally landed in my hands, the legal documents with forged dates and signatures, I sat in my car outside the law office and cried. Not loud, broken sobs, but silent tears that burned down my cheeks and tasted like years of betrayal. They'd looked me in the eye on Christmas Eve and lied, all while sitting on the inheritance they stole from me. The canceled Christmas was never about rest or stress, it was about guilt. They couldn't stand to see me that night, knowing what they'd done. For a long time, I just sat there, clutching the papers, thinking of my grandmother. She had loved me fiercely, called me her steady heart. And now, the money she'd entrusted to secure my future was gone, swallowed by greed disguised as family loyalty. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing my apartment, staring at the lights outside, thinking about justice and pain and how easily love can turn into something cruel. I wasn't sure whether to call them, confront them, or let the law speak for me. But then fate intervened. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was shaky, softer than usual. "Catherine," she said, "we need to talk. Your father isn't feeling well. I think you should come by." For a second, I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered the papers sitting on my desk. When I arrived at their house, snow covered the driveway in a thin, pale layer. Everything looked smaller than I remembered the porch where I'd once sat drinking cocoa, the window I used to decorate with paper snowflakes. It was strange how betrayal could shrink even the biggest places. My mother opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked older, fragile even. "He's in the study," she said quietly. "He's been asking about you." The study smelled like tobacco and old wood. My father sat in his armchair, pale, wrapped in a blanket. For a moment, I saw the man I once admired, the one who used to fix my bike, the one who taught me to drive. But the illusion shattered when he looked up and said, "You didn't have to bring a lawyer into this, Catherine." The calmness in his tone sent a chill through me. "So it's true," I said softly. "You did it." He sighed, looking away. "You wouldn't understand. Your brother needed help. You're successful, independent. We knew you'd be fine." My voice trembled. "You stole from me." "It's family money," he snapped. "We just redistributed it. Your grandmother would have wanted it that way." My throat tightened. "No, she wanted it for me. She told me herself." My mother stepped forward, her voice gentle but hollow. "Catherine, please, we can fix this quietly. Don't let this tear us apart." I laughed, a bitter, sharp sound I barely recognized. "You already tore us apart. You just didn't expect me to notice." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. My father's face hardened. "If you go through with this, you'll destroy this family." "No," I said. "Steady now, you destroyed it the moment you lied." I turned and walked out before they could say another word. My mother called after me, her voice breaking, but I didn't stop. The air outside was cold enough to sting my lungs, but it felt like freedom. The lawsuit began quietly, but word spread fast. My brother called me, furious. "You're going to ruin Dad's reputation over money," he shouted. "This isn't about money," I said. "It's about the truth." He laughed bitterly. "You've always been dramatic. You were never cut out for this family anyway." And maybe he was right. I wasn't cut out for a family that valued lies over love. Months passed. There were hearings, statements, confrontations. My parents stopped speaking to me altogether, except through lawyers. The weight of it all was unbearable at times. But underneath the exhaustion was something fierce resolve. And then, one cold morning in early spring, Michael called. His voice was steady, almost warm. "We won. Catherine, the court restored your inheritance. The trust was fraudulent. It's over." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "It's over," I whispered. "Yes," he said, "you did it." I hung up and sat in silence, staring out at the thawing snow. The sun was breaking through for the first time in weeks, melting away the gray. I thought victory would feel loud, triumphant, but it didn't. It was quiet, peaceful, like a wound closing. That night, I wrote a letter to my grandmother. I know it sounds foolish, writing to someone who's gone, but it felt right. "You were right about them, and you were right about me. I finally found my voice, even if it cost me the family I thought I needed. I miss you every day. Thank you for giving me the strength to stand alone." I placed the letter by the window and let the candlelight flicker against the glass. They called me again weeks later, my mother this time. I didn't answer. Some things don't need to be reopened. Some endings deserve silence. Because in that silence, I finally heard something I hadn't in years, the sound of peace. Weeks passed before I finally allowed myself to exhale. The lawsuit had ended, but the emotional debris still floated around me like dust in an abandoned house. I thought winning would bring clarity, but what it really brought was space empty, echoing space where my family's voices used to be. At first, I filled that silence with busyness, work, errands, long walks around the lake, anything to avoid feeling the full weight of what I'd lost. But grief has a way of finding you in the quiet moments in the middle of brushing your teeth, or standing in line at the grocery store, or hearing a song that used to play in your childhood kitchen. That's when it hit me most, the absurdity of it all, that my parents had chosen money over their daughter. One evening, while I was watering the plants on my balcony, I received a text from my cousin Emily, the same cousin who'd posted the Christmas photos that shattered everything. "Hey Kat, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know they hadn't invited you. I never would have posted those pictures if I'd known." For a moment, I just stared at the message. Then I typed back, "It's okay. You didn't know. It's not your fault." She replied quickly, "They've been fighting a lot since the lawsuit. Your dad's health is worse. Your mom's trying to reach you. Maybe you should talk to her." I stared at the words "talk to her" for a long time. My chest tightened, torn between anger and that old, dangerous tenderness that used to pull me back into their orbit. I wanted to forgive them, but forgiveness without accountability is just submission, and I was done shrinking to make them comfortable. Still, that night, I dreamed of my mother. She was sitting at our old kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, her eyes tired. When I walked toward her, she looked up and whispered, "You were right." When I woke up, I couldn't shake it. 3 days later, I got another call. This time, I answered. Catherine, her voice was softer than I remembered, weaker. "It's Mom." I closed my eyes, I know. There was a pause, then a deep sigh. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know. I understand now. What we did. What it cost." Her words trembled with sincerity. But I'd learned that sincerity doesn't always equal change. "Why?" "Mom," I asked quietly. "Why lie? Why shut me out?" Her breath caught on the other end. "Because it was easier," she said finally. "Your father couldn't face you. He knew what he did was wrong. He thought if you weren't there, he wouldn't have to look at your disappointment." "And you?" I asked. "I went along with it," she whispered, "because I was afraid of losing him. I felt tears prick at my eyes, and you lost me instead." Silence, then a soft sob. "Yes, I did." The sound of her crying, raw, unguarded, cut through the armor I'd spent months building. For the first time, I heard not the manipulator, not the enabler, but the woman beneath it all, scared, broken, human. "I don't hate you," I said after a long pause. "But I can't go back. I'm not the daughter you used to control. I'm not the one who'll smile through the pain anymore." "I know," she said through tears, "and maybe that's what I'm proudest of." We didn't say goodbye. We just sat in silence. The kind of silence that feels like something ending and beginning at the same time. After the call, I sat by the window for a long time, watching the light fade over the snow. I thought about how families like ours build their houses out of secrets, and how those walls eventually collapse. But I also thought about my grandmother, the woman who saw the truth in me before I even did. I could almost hear her voice, warm and steady. "They may take what's yours for a while, but they can't keep what isn't meant for them." Over the next few months, I began rebuilding my life from the ground up. I bought a small cabin just outside the city, nothing fancy, just quiet, surrounded by pines and the kind of stillness that heals you without asking permission. Every morning, I'd light a candle for my grandmother and whisper, "I'm okay." And I was slowly, honestly, quietly okay. Then one afternoon, as I was unpacking boxes in my new place, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name written in familiar cursive. My mother's handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, heart pounding. Inside was a short note and a folded check. Catherine, I know this can't make up for what we took, but it's what I could recover from the accounts. Your father doesn't know. I just want to do one right thing before it's too late. Mom. The check wasn't for much compared to what they owed, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the gesture, quiet, imperfect, but real. I didn't cash it. Instead, I slipped it into my grandmother's old jewelry box, alongside her letter and the first photo of me holding her hand. It wasn't closure, not in the cinematic way I used to imagine. It was something simpler, acceptance. A few weeks later, I stood on my cabin's porch as snow began to fall, flakes landing on my coat like tiny, melting promises. I breathed in deeply, the cold air filling my lungs, and smiled to myself. I had spent my whole life trying to be invited to someone else's version of family, when all along, I was capable of building my own. Now, my holidays are small, just me, a few close friends, laughter echoing through the cabin, candles flickering against the dark. There's no drama, no pretending, no guilt, just warmth. And every Christmas, I leave one seat open at the table, not for them, but for peace. For the girl I used to be, who once waited by the phone, believing she wasn't enough. Because she always was. Sometimes karma doesn't look like punishment. Sometimes it's simply truth catching up in the quietest, kindest way possible. And when it does, it doesn't roar, it whispers, "You're free now."